Good morning and welcome to the programme. A nice morning to get out and about for a bit of fresh air if you're there, because it's given a lot of rain tonight and a lot of rain tomorrow morning. Good luck to anybody taking part in sports over the weekend. Coming up in the show, we're going to be talking to a US judge, Timothy Connors, and Dr. Roisin O'Shea. A very interesting story, because Judge Connors is related to a number of traveller families, and he met them in Tramore last night. We'll be hearing his exclusive story. Dan Mulhall has been talking to me. He's the Irish ambassador to the United States. He's visiting schools this morning and visiting schools yesterday. We're going to be talking about all things history and how should war be commemorated. For example, the big controversy regarding the Black and Tans, the RIC. We're also going to be talking politics this morning. We're going to be looking into our crystal ball, both nationally and locally. Liz Reddy's going to be coming in, Johnny O'Connor, Mary Frances Ryan and Kieran Foley for a special panel discussion after around 20 past 11 this morning on the political scene, and we'll also be hitting some of those questions to John Cummins, who's coming in shortly to talk to us about the turmoil that has engulfed Fine Gael over the last 12 months in Waterford and where now for the party. Firstly, school secretaries. If your young boy or girl is in school today and gets detention, the letter may not get to him or her to get home tonight, because school secretaries are on strike. They are the first time ever they've gone out in protest, and they're going to start a work to rule on Monday. A lot of school secretaries, there's around 3,000 of them around the country. A lot of them earn as little as €13,000 a year. They're on irregular short-term contracts with no pay during summer holidays or school breaks. Now, there are a few hundred school secretaries who are paid directly by the Department of Education. They're on salaries of around $24,000. So the Minister made some kind of a offer to them last December, the lower paid school secretaries, of around 1.5%. But they rejected that. So they gathered this morning. Instead of protesting outside their individual schools this morning, they came in towards the People's Park, just opposite Water Park College, and they're there this morning with their Forza, F-O-R-S-A, trade union banners, and they're also being joined by a number of politicians, supporters and members of the TUI, and you'll hear an interview with the president of the TUI, who is here in Waterford today. I was out on the protest line with them this morning, and here is what some of the school secretaries had to say. Caroline Bulger, where are you down from today?
Kilsheelan.
Why are you here today? Why are you protesting? Why do you feel the need to protest?
We're protesting for rights to be treated the same as our co-workers, like our SNAs and teachers, to be paid by the Department of Education and to get our benefits the same as regards pensions.
How long are you in the job?
I'll be in my job 18 years next May.
And how frustrating is it, or how do you feel about it?
Very frustrating. Well, to think that we can't get the same benefits, it's very frustrating. To think everyone else can get it and we can't.
Emer, what's the surname, please?
Martin.
Emer, why are you here today?
For the same reason as everybody, just for the rights, for our rights as in the role that we do, departmental job, and we should be treated the same. Yeah.
Where are you working yourself?
I'm in Light of Christ School in Dunmore East.
And how long are you there?
I'm there 3 years, so I'm a newbie, but yeah.
So, obviously, to come out on the streets to actually cause disruption in the schools, it's something you would have thought long and hard about.
Oh, absolutely. But I think we're all united in our feelings about it at this stage. So it's unfortunately, that's what has to be done. Yeah.
Full name again, please.
Eileen O'Sullivan.
Eileen, where are you in school?
I'm out in Calais Boys National School in Dunmore East.
What sort of an offer did the department make to you in the last few months?
1.5%.
That's a pay rise of 1.5%.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
It was an insult. Just wouldn't listen to that offer at all. It's just an insult. They're not listening to what we're saying, what we're asking for. We want to go on a pay scale, and we want to have pension rights. We want to have holiday pay. Those all have been asked for, and they're just ignored, and have been ignored up to now.
Were you surprised at the low offer?
No, I wasn't, because I feel I'm in school 25 years. I feel that they're not listening to us. We've been doing work basically for very little pay, and they're quite happy to go along with that. It's time that changed.
What would you settle for? Joe, you should never give away your negotiating rights, and that is...
Our union is in there asking for that, and they will let the Department of Education know what we're settling for.
And will you take to the picket line again?
Certainly, yeah, we won't be giving up this time.
Escalation?
Yeah, if it needs to be, yeah, if we have to do it, yes, we will.
Seamus Lahart, President of the TUI, is that right?
Yes.
Why are you here today?
Well, school secretaries are a central part of school life. They're very supportive to teachers, they're supportive to students, and they're supportive to school management. And we believe, as a trade union, that since we share the workplace with them, they need to be treated properly. They need to have proper terms and conditions of employment. They should not depend on social welfare. They should not depend on a salary as low as €12,000. To quote Leo Varadkar, they get up in the morning, they work hard, they are vital to the school community, and we would like to see them treated properly.
From a strategy point of view, there's more likelihood that they will win their battle if ye in some way are able to join forces with them. Is that possible, or is that against the trade union legislation?
No, well, I mean, we're with them in principle. They are members of Forsa, we're members of Teachers Union of Ireland.
I know, but if you're told, if some of your members are asked to do some of the work, that they're going to be a work to rule is starting on Monday.
Absolutely not. We will not advise. We will advise our students not to engage in work that school secretaries would normally do. Absolutely not. We will support them in their strike action.
Support them in their strike action, and a lot of cars and motorists going past there this morning. We're doing just that, beeping horns. John Cummins, I'll come to you now in a second. Firstly, a text in. Anybody want to text, please do. 083 333 975, text or WhatsApp. Or you can call Audrey on 051 846 123 about any of the items we are covering this morning. Hello, Damien. Fair play to them. I work in a school as a cleaner. Not as important, I suppose. But we do some work for a whole school. And there's only 2 cleaners in my school, myself and another. We'd love to be able to get paid more and be on a pension, but we're not able to do it. But I do support the secretaries in their work. Our secretary does unreal work in the school, and we wouldn't survive without her. That's from a cleaner whose name hasn't come with the text. Thank you very much for sending in that text. John Cummins, Fine Gael councillor. The stories, even that text there from the secretary, you hear things and you see things in school, and you work in St. Paul's, isn't that right?
Yeah, I do, Damien. And
undercurrent, you'll have teachers at different levels and secretaries, and like people just survive, some of them.
Sure, yes, and look, all elements of the education system, they all work in hand in hand with one another in order to benefit the pupils. Secretaries are an integral part of it. I liken them to the oil that makes the engine keep ticking. Like they're really important. Equally, cleaners, caretaking staff, every single element of the school system all works for the betterment of students. I fully support them in their claim. It's obviously there's discrepancies there between those employed by ETBs and those that are paid through the general allocation through the Department of Education direct to primary and secondary schools. So that definitely does need to be addressed. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it there this morning as I had an appointment.
The problem is you're in government, Fine Gael are in government.
Sure.
The Fine Gael minister responsible with this is Minister Joe McHugh. Like, he's been made aware of the job insecurity, the 2-tier pay structure. He's dragged his heels, David Cullinan says, in reaching any sort of an agreement. So it's grand for you to say you support them, but at the same sense, you're part of a party which is not given. Like, you made a measly 1.5% offer to them before Christmas.
Look, I think this issue will be resolved, Damien, and I think it's very important that it is resolved. And I think what's not helping, obviously, is the discrepancies in the system there between the ETB and, you know, the Department of Education or individual voluntary secondary schools that operate individually. So they all need to come under the same system. You know, secretaries and cleaners and everybody, they're all an integral part of the system. I see it every day. Well, I've taken unpaid leave from school now in order to focus my attention on the campaign, but obviously I've been a teacher for the last 10 years in various schools, from, you know, Dungarvan to Kilmac and right into the city. I've been in St. Paul's now for the last 6 years. So, like, you know, the work that goes on there, you know, it needs to be recognised, and, you know, as I said, I fully support our campaign.
Would you be writing to the minister? Would you tell your party apparatus that
absolutely. Look,
needs to be sorted and give them what they want.
From here, I'm going to Dublin this afternoon. We have my first parliamentary party meeting that general election candidates have been invited to. It is my intention that I'll speak to the Minister for Education. I also have to speak to a number of ministers about a number of key projects here in Waterford to try and get the final elements of delivery here in 2020. There's been a lot of work going on the likes of the North Quays and the airport and the hospital over the last number of years, and I really believe that 2020 is going to be the year that we're going to see the delivery of key projects here in Waterford.
We're going to talk about those matters in a second. Firstly, you just mentioned you've taken unpaid leave.
Sure.
Since Christmas?
Since
yesterday?
I don't even know what day it is. Today's Friday. Wednesday.
Wednesday. So
yes.
Unpaid leave.
Yes.
For how long?
Well, for the duration of the campaign, that may be shorter, it may be long.
That's
we'll
the question.
See.
Are you able to say,
I'll
take 3 months, or can you go? If the election is in the end of February, will you go back in March, or if it's in April, will you go back in May?
Well, hopefully, Damien, I'll be in a position where I won't be going back and I'll be going to Dáil Éireann to represent the people of Waterford City and County in the Dáil.
This has come up before. A lot of TDs are teachers that they maintain their position. What would happen if you do become a TD?
Well, my understanding, and I haven't looked into it in great detail, but even if I wasn't going for the Dáil, my understanding is once you've taught for 5 years, you're entitled to take a maximum career break of 5 years.
Okay.
After that, you have to make a decision then whether you wish to continue, be that in politics or go back to your job in education.
And you wouldn't be paid during that career break?
Not be paid, and you wouldn't be accruing pension payments in that time either.
Okay.
That's my understanding, but I haven't looked into it in detail.
Stay with us. Text us in. Any questions for John, please? 083 333 975. Okay, it is now 19 minutes past 10. Welcome back to the programme. We're not going to have an awful lot of time with John this morning. It's not an in-depth interview. We're just going to skirt around a number of issues and hit on a couple of things, because when the election is called, we'll be doing more in-depth interviews. So we'll go through a few things relatively quickly, John. Sure. Firstly, you were at the council meeting last night. Sure. What's your sense of how things are? Is there a pact? Is there anybody in charge?
Good question. No, there isn't a pact. The pact fell prior to Christmas with the budget. Obviously, Sinn Féin voted against what would have been their pact colleagues in the Greens, Labour and Independents in terms of voting against the budget. Obviously, Fine Gael and Labour, or Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil and Independents came in with our own proposals to supplement those that had been proposed earlier in the evening, and we got to a situation where budget was passed, but there was one meeting subsequent to that with Labour, the Greens and Independents and Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Obviously that'll be explored further in the new year, but at this present time, no, there is no pact.
So John Pratt is still the mayor?
He is.
And he's still in charge.
Sure.
And our vote's been taken on a issue-by-issue basis.
Look, to be honest with you, in local government, most issues are dealt with on a case-by-case basis. And there is no pact comes into play. The main issues where pact items come into play are the budget, the development plan, key policy issues, and of course the election of mayors and chairs. So
chairs of strategic committees and all sorts of stuff, and that's where a lot of the power lies.
And all of those. So at this moment there isn't. I'm sure there'll be further discussions in the weeks and months ahead. Okay,
one of the issues that was raised last night was about the airport. Can you ask John about his role at Waterford Airport and plans beyond the runway extension? What's the situation? Like we've heard this morning that Michael Walsh has said to Liz and our news team that planning permission will be put in next week.
Yeah.
That's still an awful lot of time from where we were last summer, where we were saying things were going to progress very quickly. Planning permission only going in January.
Yes, but we're not really when you look at it in terms of the timescale, because we couldn't have gone on the ground at Waterford Airport in terms of groundworks in the autumn winter season now. So he's looking at in terms of spring summer getting on the ground in terms of groundworks at Waterford Airport. I was on the board for 5 years. That ceased in May, and new council members were were appointed to the
And
board.
did you meet often?
Yes.
What about this idea that the board hasn't met in nearly half a year?
I find it hard to understand how that occurred. I would say in my 5 years on the board, there wasn't 2 months that went by where there wasn't a board meeting. So, that's for those 2 members of the board to ascertain why that has occurred.
Any of your old colleagues on the board said, we're not meeting, this is strange?
No, I haven't had any. I've had dialogue with a few before Christmas, just in terms of obviously the CPOs were lodged and the planning is imminent now. But it was always the case in terms of the timeline that it was going to go to groundworks in spring, summer of this year. So we're not really behind schedule. Like obviously the goal is that we'll have flights operation in spring of 2021 from Waterford Airport.
2021. Speaking of planning, some news regarding Welsh Park?
Yes, well, I don't have the full details as of yet, but I understand there's positive news in relation to funding for Welsh Park. The large-scale capital grants are due to be announced, I think, with an embargo of 11 o'clock, so I don't have the full financial details, but I believe there's positive news with regards to Welsh Park in there. And I think that's very important because, our GAA players, both hurling and football and camogie and ladies football, they deserve the best facilities, and obviously the spectators deserve to be in better quality ground while we watch our players perform at the highest level.
Brian has texted in, fair play to John. He was one of the only 2 councillors to wear a poppy and attend the Royal British Legion Remembrance Ceremony to remember those in the city that fought in World War I. Best of luck in your election bid. You're a general election candidate for Fine Gael, one of the 2.
Sure.
Do you think the Black and Tans should be commemorated? No,
look, and I think, to be honest with you, the commemoration event as it was conceived was ill-advised. There's many ways that you can look at events in our history. We've had many successful events like seminars and conferences over the last 3 to 4 years. I was at one in City Hall, a national event in relation to Redmond in 2018, which went very well. I think the event as was planned was ill-advised. And I think, to be honest with you, there's families right across this country that have, such a deep history. I know on my own side, my grandfather we have medals at home where he fought and resisted British forces in Ireland. And on the other side, Dad hails from Ballybrickham, which would have been Redmond territory. So if you just scratch the surface of our history, and I think over the next number of years in particular, as we commemorate the Civil War, there's going to be very difficult debates that are going to be had in families right across our city and county and the country, and I think it's very important that they're handled in a delicate and careful way, and I think that was the problem with this. It wasn't handled in a delicate and careful way.
Yeah, you're saying it's ill-advised, so you're basically saying the advice was wrong, whereas Minister Charlie Flanagan, and obviously with the alma mater, the go-ahead of the Taoiseach, he said, we're going to go ahead with this. Ill-advised maybe is the wrong word to use.
Maybe it is the wrong word. No, look, it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah. I think we're going to make a mess of these Civil War memories. I think we're going to make a mess of it because Civil War politics is alive and well. Like yourselves and Fianna Fáil have been at each other for 100 years. You're not showing the love. In certain ways you do, but Civil War politics this is the first time ever we're commemorating the Civil War as well.
Yeah,
we've commemorated 1916.
Yeah.
We've got together with the British and commemorated the Somme and all the Irish that fought there, but this Civil War thing is totally different.
Yes, and it's going to be exceptionally difficult, but I'm 32 years of age. I have a keen interest in history, but you say Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are at each other's throat. I work exceptionally well with my Fianna Fáil colleagues here in Waterford, as I do with other parties. To be honest with you, that doesn't interest me. We're in 2020, but it is important that we pause and we reflect and we handle these events with care and attention. And I think if you look back over the last 3 to 4 years, the events have been handled very well.
I'd agree with you.
And I think
on those issues,
and I think now, as we move into the next more difficult phase, it's very important that there's cool heads and people handle them with care and attention.
A text maybe tongue in cheek. Will John be at the Pickettstown commemoration on Sunday?
On Sunday, I don't know where I am on Sunday.
Would you go to the Pickerstown Camaraderie?
I'd have no problem.
Even though it would have been associated and is associated with republicanism.
But as I said to you, Damien, you know,
I know, yeah.
my grandfather, we have medals in our home in relation to resistance of British forces.
If somebody from that commemorative committee said, Fine Gael, we want Fine Gael members to turn up, would you turn up?
I have no problem attending any event right across the city and county, be it a community or any other events. But just to be said, I never got an invitation to such an event before.
Can you ask John about how long did Enda Kenny take for a career break? We don't actually know. I don't know how long Enda Kenny took.
I don't know, but as far as I know, the rules were different at that time. But I know, I'm fairly certain the rules are now that anybody can take a maximum career break of 5 years.
We'll go into this, another text from a person. We'll go into the details and stuff a lot different. Have you outlined your position on abortion?
Look, that's a very difficult issue for many people right across the country. We've had a referendum in relation to that, and legislation has been passed, and I welcome that. And you know, there was debates in families, in my own family, in close relatives as well, in relation to the issue last year when it was discussed. So look, it's
really say very much at the time.
I didn't, Damien, and
to comment in a way.
Well, I never refuse to comment, but no, I didn't, because I felt it was a debate to be had in every home right across the country, and I still believe that.
But one of the comments you did make was that you'd address the question when you would be standing for the Oireachtas.
Did I?
Yeah, you did.
When did I say that?
You said that there during the referendum itself.
Well,
like, what's your view about?
My view, Damien, as I've clearly said to you, is we had a referendum of the people last year. We had a vote, and legislation has now been implemented in relation to that issue, and I welcome that.
Do you believe a woman should have the right to choose?
Look, Damien, I really don't want to go into detail in relation to this issue. We've had a referendum, you know, we've had that debate, we've done it. My views are immaterial in
really,
that.
John,
well, they are, Damien, because legislation is in place in relation to this issue.
Yeah.
It is done and it is dealt with, and regardless of what side you are on in relation to the debate, that issue now, as far as I'm concerned and as far as anyone else is concerned, is the debate is over and it's done with. And I welcome the fact that we have legislation in place and that the issue has been put to bed.
So, seeing through that argument, what you're saying is that your personal views are your own views.
Sure. You're
entitled to your own views. Everybody's entitled to your own views. But when I asked you, are you in favour of a woman's right to choose, you didn't say yes.
Well, look, Damien, you know, you can look. We can tie up the debate in this. Personally, you know, I think it's very important that we had a mature discussion in relation to this. I think every family in the country did have a mature discussion. I know we had a mature discussion in our own family in relation to that, and maybe younger generations' opinions were different to older generations' opinions, and we saw that in the vote that was carried out last year, and it's very important that we move on from this issue. The legislation has been put in place, and that's a positive, in my opinion.
Is Liam Brazel going to run in the general election for Fine Gael, do you think?
Well, I've spoken to Liam in the last number of days. He's still considering the matter, is my understanding. Obviously, you know, Liam is an excellent councillor. He's a very valuable member of the Fine Gael team in Waterford. He has a huge support in the Cumbrae area. He's one of the hardest working councillors, I think, that I know on the ground in terms of individual reps. So if he does decide to run, you know, genuinely, I'd wish him the very best. It doesn't really change the picture for me in terms of my focus on trying to get to as many doors and meet as many people as possible. But, you know...
When you're up in Dublin today, will you be advising or telling your Fine Gael colleagues, listen, it'd be better if he didn't run?
No, I won't, because to be honest with you, they wouldn't be listening to me anyway in terms of that. Because
Gagan said it wouldn't make sense for Liam Brazel to be put in the ticket now, that it's nicely divided up as it is.
Yeah, look, and I said something similar when Paddy Coffey obviously decided to take himself out of politics prior to Christmas. But look, those decisions are made by the Executive Council. Damien can say all he wants and I can say all I want, but they'll ultimately decide what to do. But if he does decide to run, I wish him the best of luck.
Posters are being done up as we speak?
I think they're not far away from being done, I think, Damien. So, look, I don't know when we're going to have it, be it February, April or May, but it's certainly not too far away. And, you know, my team is working as hard as possible to get to as many people as possible between now and Polling Day.
Safe driving to Dublin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in, and we'll talk to you again, OK?
Thanks very much.
Now, welcome back to the programme. We'll just settle our guests in here, and you pull in the microphone there, Judge. Thank you very much. I'm going to read out a couple of questions first there. John Cummins should answer the questions regarding Pickettstown and the woman's right to choose. Regarding Waterford Airport, Richie in Abbeyside says, will it take another feasibility study before we have an answer on this? And other people saying that the questions to John were very straight. He sounds like a genuine sound man, and you should stop trying to tie him up with awkward questions. Damien. Judge, I'd never try to tie anybody up with awkward questions, would I? Not at all.
I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't think so. So we've got Judge Timothy Connors and Dr. Roisin O'Shea. And who do we have here as well?
Good morning. I'm Margaret Connors. I'm Timothy's wife.
Hello, Margaret. How are you?
And a professor of law.
Pull the microphone there a little bit closer there, Margaret. Pull it right down. Lovely. And Judge, just move that slightly. Thank you so much for joining us. I have a big resume and a big lead-in to you to describe who you are, but just from our listeners' point of view, who are you? Tell me a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, I'm a state court judge from the States. I'm Irish-American. I'm fourth generation. And my wife and I teach at the University of Michigan Law School and Vermont Law School. And we, because we started as barristers, what you have barristers as litigators, both my wife was in the criminal field, I was in the civil field, and we were very good at it. But we began to realize that approach oftentimes could be very destructive, particularly for families and youth and communities, and even in the whole criminal and civil justice system as well. So that began our journey in learning from our indigenous tribal courts. So the United States has 573 native courts, independent domestic nations. And the traditional style of justice in the tribal courts was the antithesis to our adversary system. So as we began to learn about that, the more we said, this has value. It should be part of our justice systems, our national justice system. And thank goodness, because we had these Irish-American Supreme Court justices who said, we get it, they opened the door for us.
And how did that separate system develop as an antithesis to the established system?
Margaret, Damien wants you to speak.
Give us a little view, Margaret. Give us a little view. How did it develop in parallel or in a different way?
All right. So the first thing is you had to get permission to do it. So we went to the Supreme Court, and we had a sort of respectful government-to-government relationship through our tribal, state, federal forum.
Yes.
So the first thing the Supreme Court has to give it air, has to give it light. So it says, we'll let you try it. And we did, and we brought in our tribal judges to help train us and to teach us. And so the idea would be is that I think the sort of the keynote question is, we don't control who walks in the doors into court. Someone else brings the cases. We make a decision and it goes back out. So the question for us, those of us who are involved in courts, is to say, after we do whatever we're going to do,
what happens?
Whatever label we put on the event, are these people going to have continued contact with each other and the community? And if that's the case, then we believe peacemaking or restorative justice or mediation is the preferred, should be the presumptive model, because we already have a default system.
Dr. Roisin O'Shea, good morning.
Good morning, Damien.
Why did you see it important to invite Timothy over and Margaret? Why? What do we have to learn from the experience?
Well, I think the first thing is don't reinvent the wheel would be a motto that I have. So I did PhD research. I popped around the world looking at who's doing what really, better than we're doing it. Not that we don't do everything. We do have really good stuff here too. So it's. I was trying to look around, and so part of that was getting to present at different conferences. And I met Tim and Margaret in May when I was presenting in Toronto this year, and I was presenting on a WIT a research project that we had done on family mediation, where I'd put all these best bits together in terms of mediation. Tim and Margaret turned up at the presentation I did, and Tim said, "You and I need to talk." So he said, "I'm presenting tomorrow. You need to come to my presentation." So I went to his presentation, which was fascinating because it was done as a circle with Native American judges, and there were some tribal elders there. And so Tim was talking about peacemaking, and I'm hearing the same principles that I adopt in mediation. In other words, mediation is a very old form of settling human disputes. I mean, the first issue is that we as human beings get into conflict. We all know somebody who's in a fight. We all know a marriage that's breaking down. We all know a contract dispute. We all know we get into disputes with one another. And we also align to tribes. So, I don't know anything about GAA, so I'm not in the tribe of GAA, and my friends go nuts when there's a game on. They go, "Roisin, you're not watching?" And I'm like, no. But we have tribal allegiances, and being part of those tribes or being parts of families can in itself bring us into conflict with other people who don't have the same values or the same cultural things or the same important pieces about how we live. So how do we, I think as Tim just said there, the key piece for me, and I'm really glad to hear you say the same thing, what happens to people after we resolve a dispute? What happens after I help people resolve a dispute?
Yes.
So I say to people when they're, say, doing a separation or divorce with me in mediation, let me know how you get on. And I put into the agreement that if they have any further dispute or anything that happens in relation to their situation, come back.
Mm.
Okay.
So it's to hold them with you further on, so that, because the great difficulty about the black and white justice system that we have is that it's just arbitrary. People come in front of a judge, and a judge has to make an order, and that order is made, and away they go. And what happens to people after that is the key piece. So for Tim as a senior judge, he's been doing this for years and he sees the difficulties.
We'll explore that a little bit more in a few minutes, and we've got enough time now to go through different aspects of things. One of the things you're here for, you're also speaking at the King's Inn on the effect of the Mediation Act in Ireland, and you're tracing your roots. You discovered something very interesting. As I said in the introduction, your surname is Connors.
Yes.
What have you found?
Well, I'm fourth generation, so it was my great-great-grandfather who was a Connors, and the last we knew he came out of Galway. And in the course of this, reaching back, I find out that my ancestors on my father's side are travellers, and I had a most wonderful Margaret and I and the doctor last night with my family members here that we did not know of, and dinner. It was beautiful.
So where did you meet? Who did you meet?
We met. And
they're all listening, by the way.
Yeah, they're listening. They're going to be there. They're going to be there. We're going to meet with Mihal, Connors, and Mary, and their daughter Molly, and son Edward, and Christina, and the sisters, and it was a most beautiful, warm experience. And Margaret, my wife's already posted on Facebook to all the family, saying, "Here's a picture. We met the Irish Connors," and so we're so proud of that.
And how did you trace them from Galway to Waterford?
We didn't really so much that. It's the history and what the explanation was very. We couldn't go back farther.
Okay, yes.
And really through Dr. O'Shea and Molly Connors, who I hope, I'm putting out the pitch, will go and be a lawyer, because we're trying
to get Molly
to have that voice.
I'm in King's Inns at the moment doing the modular barrister law degree, and I'm now want Molly to come and do it because she's a powerful advocate. She's got a really sparky brain, and I was thinking that, as far as I know at the moment, there are no barristers or judges in the traveller community in Ireland, and it's about time.
No, there aren't. Yeah,
and this woman can do it. So Molly, if you're listening,
how old is Molly?
Oh, I think she's late 20s, early 30s.
Okay, so
yeah, she's ready. She's ready.
And another part of the Connors family that I want to say, and was sharing with the ones here, is that my great-great-uncle, through my father's side, the Connors side, was the first Irish Catholic congressperson in the United States. And we are quite proud of that as well. So I'm equally proud of all of those sides of my family and the Connors.
And so you should be. Stay with us. Anybody want to text in, please? Any questions for our learned judge? And Margaret. We'll get you talking yet, Margaret.
We will.
And she's quite eloquent.
Now, welcome back to the programme. I'm going to record a little bit for Facebook in a minute. We're going to have a little chat as we continue. Margaret, will you talk to me for a minute, please?
I'll try.
Come in a little bit closer to the microphone there, please. Thank you very much. What was your impression of the meeting last night, the chat?
I was quite honestly blown away. We didn't know what to expect. We were a bit apprehensive. We didn't want to offend anyone. And we were totally astonished by the warmth and the preparation that had gone into readying for our arrival. The house was prepared. The table was prepared. All of the adult children were there except for one who had a sick child. The two sisters-in-law were there. The food, they prepared an exquisite lamb feast for us with the drinks, whatever we wanted. We were so beautifully received, and they were kind and warm and inquisitive and outpouring. It couldn't have been a more fascinating experience.
As I say, we're joined by Margaret Connors. We have Judge Timothy Connors, Margaret's husband, and Dr. Roisin O'Shea here. Judge, you have a little pendant, a little brooch, you could call it.
Yes.
This was given to you last night
Yes.
by your relations, by your cousin. And what is it?
This, as I understand it, was given was when the travelers were recognized as a distinct Indigenous group in 2017. This was a pin honoring that. This is the pin he wore. And last night I asked him if I could take my tie off. He said, sure, and I gave it to him. I said, can I leave it with you? And he said, and let me give you this. So I am going to wear this underneath, next to my heart, on the bench when I try to do justice back in the States.
What about discrimination and traveller discrimination? People changing their name from Connors to O'Connor over the years to hide the fact that there may be traveller blood and there may be descendants there because society had been prejudiced against travellers.
You know, I'm just learning about that. But the story is so similar to the experience of our native friends and our native allies. Our very good friends who have helped us and been great leaders in Indian country. Remember growing up, don't let anyone know you're Indian. If anybody from the state comes into the neighborhood, hide the children in the woods because they'll be taken away. There's a history of overt discrimination. And even some of the most prominent Indian judges, I know it's in every community, have felt it. So we actually learned about this whole experience through the experience in America of our indigenous community and, frankly, our African-American community. Now, you go back into history and understanding the roots of where that comes from. This is new to me, and yet it is a story that I've heard, and it's particularly touching because it's part of my family. And when I communicated that I found out I was a traveler to Native Americans, they were so happy because they said, we could never figure out why you got it over so easily over here. I think it was just in my DNA.
Roisin, what do you think of that?
I would have to say last night was powerfully moving, and I'm not a person who's moved very often. I've seen a lot, I've done a lot. I'm kind of a world-weary traveller at times, but it was actually emotional last night. And, I was saying to Timothy and Margaret, I'm coming into my 60th year, and I have never been invited into the home of travellers. Because I was explaining to Tim and Margaret, our community here is very divided. Travellers are a very separate community, and I respect that because they have a separate culture and a separate path. But we're all human beings living in Ireland, and I keep meeting intolerance and discrimination against travellers in the work that I do. So last night was a fantastic opportunity for me to be there, to listen, to hear. We were speaking for hours, and primarily Tim and Margaret, about the issues that are facing travellers in Ireland today, and about that resentment, or a justified resentment, that by saying a person is a traveller, that there's an immediate, less than about them, or there's a discriminatory piece. I mean, there was one, the thing with the pin that Tim was given was fascinating, because that pin, Michael Connors wants all of his family to wear the pin. He wants all travellers that he knows to wear the pin. But he also understands that some travellers don't want to put the pin on and say, because it says, I am a traveller. It's not for anybody else to wear that pin except a traveller. But it's time to be proud of that heritage.
What will you take from this experience, Judge? What will you bring back, Margaret, and from this in terms of a learned experience? Margaret.
I think the universality of the human race. Tim has a quote that we love that John Kennedy said. Hearing each of these people talk last night, they were saying things that could have very easily come out of our mouths. We all had those same emotions, those same perceptions, those same desires, and it was really, it brought us all together.
What would you have to say to that, Judge?
I think that it will help me tremendously when I go back. What I found is we talk about bringing peacemaking and restorative justice into our justice systems. It's been the Irish-American judges who have been the most receptive. And this particular story will help to make that linkage. One of the things that strikes me when I'll be 66. When I was 6 years old, John Kennedy was running, and I can remember my dad putting me on his shoulders in the crowd so I could hear the man. And we were so moved by him, and I was so moved as a child, and my dad was so moved because of that, about Kennedy's great speech, peace speech. And I sort of always, I have to carry it with me because I get sort of emotional about it. But when Kennedy said, for in the final analysis, our basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal. And 3 months later, he was assassinated. And yet those words are more powerful today than ever. They have more meaning for America and for the rest of the world than ever. The spirits and the words live through the body. And I think that this is the great connector, whether you're Irish or whether you're native or where you come on the planet. We are just hurtling through space in this little womb of a mother. And, we need to take care of each other better. And we need to love each other more and forget this other stuff of divisiveness. So peacemaking was the way we get there. Peacemaking is what we've learned about. There's a quote that Mandela said that I always love. It's the day that he prayed for when the power of love would overcome the love of power.
I don't think we can add to that, Roisin.
Well, I think tonight is going to be very interesting, because tonight Tim is going to be talking to judges, barristers, law students, and we're going to be talking about mediation and peacemaking. We're going to be saying about how we really have to think about our justice system at the end of the pipeline, and how justice is actually achieved through peacemaking and mediation and support systems. And it's not about this arbitrary black and white. We're always going to need the courts for certain cases, but we really need to move away from it.
A text in through our Facebook page. Just want to say to Timothy that we are indeed listening and are very proud of you representing us all. That's from Molly, Michael, Mary, Edward, Christine and Aunt Joan. So they all want to say hello.
Oh, grand. Thank you.
And with that, Margaret, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your time in Ireland, and thank you very much, and pleasure. Thanks for coming into us.
And they'll be back.
Thank you, sir.
Roisin, thanks very much. Get them back, yeah. We'll see. And see if there's any way of specifically enhancing and advancing the projects for the next time. Judge, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And to the Connorsers listening out in Tramore, thank you very much as well.
Grand. Thank you.
Now, Liz is going to have some breaking news regarding Welch Park in the bulletin at 11 o'clock. A few texts that have come in. Caller says his son has been in court at least 10 times over the last 2 years fighting for his grandson. His experience that a lot of mothers dictate to the judges and get what they want. The mothers get tax relief and seen as the person who makes all the decisions. He says it's very unfair and anti-male father. And this person is saying that the different type of judicial system that the judge is talking about is certainly something that should be spoken about. Another caller into 051 846 123 says that regarding the commemoration, Fine Gael have handed the general election to Fianna Fáil. Ooh, there's a strong comment. Councillor Pat Fitz, Sinn Féin, has said Councillor Cummins would be more than welcome if he wants to attend the Pickerstown commemoration. The advertising notice for the commemoration specifically states that all are welcome. Another person saying the questions should have been answered, the straight questions that Damien is asking. Regarding Waterford Airport, a texter saying that he understood that John Deise may have assured the public the airport project was to start and would be up and running and going well before the end of the general election. And he wants to know what John Halligan has to say about this now. We'll talk a lot more topics in the second part of the programme. First, here's Liz with the news at 11.